Today's guest is Dr. Lynda Cramer. She has been a psychic medium from birth. In 2001, she died, and she was clinically dead for over 14 minutes. Since waking up, she has obtained all the known psychic abilities. After finishing her doctorate degree and other qualifications, she is now on a quest to educate the masses on what heaven on earth can be. And her motto is Become Your Glow. Dr. Cramer, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today, Jeff. You know, the honor's all mine. You know, beautiful people like yourself that are spreading the word. I cannot express, 15 years ago, even like 5 years after my event, nobody was talking about it. No one was discussing it. I felt like I was the only person who had had an experience. And then I got onto, just by sheer luck, there's no coincidences, but it was sheer luck that I found Dr. Raymond Moody, who had penned the term near-death experience. So I was emailing him, even though I was back here in Australia and he was in America. So for about 4 months, 6 months, him and I were contacting each other by email. And he was letting me know, oh, go and have a look at this page. Go and research this word. Go and look at this. So I got that instant, it was like a light bulb. Oh, my God, I can now talk about what happened to me, because it wasn't a surreal moment that only happened to me. I realized that what I've been through, so many millions out there have had the same sort of similar experiences. So, of course, now I'm in the position now, where I can get the word out myself on who we are, what ultimately we have after death, and what consciousness and what is love and all the heavenly emotions all about. Yeah.
And
so I'm glad you're having me today, Jeff. Thank you.
And I'm honored to have you. And I think Dr. Moody not only coining that word, but probably gave everybody a vocabulary to use to be able to, explain their experience. And speaking
Absolutely.
I'm going to let everybody know that Dr. Cramer's in Australia. I'm in Texas. There's a little bit of time delay, so I've got to get used to the delay so we don't talk over each other.
And me too.
Yeah. But speaking of experiences, how did you end up dead for 14 minutes?
I married an American. I was an Australian, and I went to North Carolina. So I'd actually met him here, and we were emailing each other, okay? So I went over there, and we got married in August 2000, and we had a year to do my immigration. So I was receiving all these parcels from the immigration office. Do this by this certain timeline, do this by this certain timeline. So it was very, very stressful, because he didn't want to partake in any of it. He virtually told me, I just want you here as an illegal immigrant. I don't want you to have a green card because I don't want you to work. It should have been a red flag moment for me. So we ended up fighting, and about 2 nights before I died, he did punch me in the side of my head. And I know I lost consciousness. I woke up and I was seeing double. Everything was blurry. He just shrugged it off and said, ha ha, you started laughing at me. I got severely sick the next day, probably because of the physical abuse or whatever. I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't breathe. This was the morning of the 6th of May, 2001. And I remember getting to the toilet, which, it's, who wants to say, oh, I died on the toilet, but I did.
Yeah.
I remember going to sleep. Then the next thing, well, I'll tell you what happened in his lifetime. He says to me when I woke up, he told me that he heard me banging on the wall, which I know I didn't do that. I did not have the physical strength to bang on the wall and wake him up. So something did wake him up. He came in, he found me lying on the floor. I was already blue. So he ran to the phone in the bedroom and he rang 911, the emergency call in America. So then he's brought the phone back to me and they said, check her breathing, check this and that. So he started doing CPR on me. It was about 10 minutes before the ambulances arrived. So they were working on me for about half an hour, 45 minutes in the toilet before they carried me out. And then he said they transported me to hospital, where I was in an induced coma. Well, I was in a coma for 9 days at the Cabarrus County Hospital in North Carolina. My version is totally different to that. So when I went to sleep, I was floating in the lounge room, which I do have photos in my book, pictures that I drew. So the first one is me floating in the ceiling. So I've actually put in a map of me floating in the room. So there's a diagram.
Do you mean, is that like the living room?
Thank you. Yes. So I was in this front room where the settee, sofas, lounge suites are with the TV. And I was floating up near the ceiling, the roof of the ceiling. And I saw the paramedics come in with all their equipment. I was so awake and in that moment that I could actually read all their name badges. So I remember still their name badges, the paramedics that came in. The sheriff arrived. There was fire department personnel attended because the fire engines came as well. All these people were huddled in the living room where I was floating only 6 feet from them. So I heard all their conversations. My body was still in the toilet, which was 2 rooms away. So, that process there is about half an hour of me just watching, observing, and it was total bliss. People say to me all the time, was I scared? Was I upset? There was nothing like that. It was total bliss. It was just acceptance of what was happening. There was no feelings of, oh my God, wake up, you've got to pay the bill. Wake up, you've got to do this tomorrow. There was nothing like that. There was no fear or expectation of future or past events. It was just this total bliss feeling and just watching with total calmness. So they wheeled my body out on a gurney, which I saw my own body because I was still hovering near the ceiling. And, I've read thousands of near-death experience reports, and a lot of them do say that when they see their own body, they've got this like gel in their hair. I saw that with my own hair. I was actually thinking, what did they put in my hair? So here we go with, I did have conscious thoughts. I could think, I could make my own decisions. So it wasn't just floating there in a state of like a dream state where we can't think. I had a total consciousness at this point which enabled me to have decisions, etc. So when they left, my ex-husband, because obviously he's now my ex because of what happened, he shut the door after everybody left and he turned off the lights before he left. So I'm just still floating there in this dimmed room when the door opens again. And then these things came through the door, which I drew these pictures like within a week of waking up. And this is me with these Orby things that I don't know what they are. So if I come in on one, you can see what they look like.
Right.
They were bright. They're like a very deep blue color. Some of them were about this big and others were quite large. And there was about 15 of them. They just floated in and they had their own like little flight path, like hovering, floating around. So, if you can imagine a few of them all doing like this type of thing. They were communicating together because none of them hit each other. But I could not communicate with these things, entities at all. But they were hovering. They came right up to my face and I could see through them this magnificent royal blue color, fluorescent with these little sparkler things coming out. But right in the center of where they were pure white light. So that's why on some of them, there's a little white light in there. Just bring it over here. See, I can see a little white light in the middle. So I have no idea what they were because they never communicated with me. But they did no harm to me. They didn't hurt me at all. And then they left. They all it was like an instant get out of here. So they all, whatever they were doing, they all just went back to the front door and the door shut. So I was hovering in the lounge room and I actually thought, what's going on now? So I could think. It wasn't like a dream. We don't think. It's like a movie playing out in front of our eyes. I could actually make decisions. So then I call it the fog stage. If you close your eyes and instantly open your eyes again, you're in a different location. So it's like me here in Australia, close my eyes, open them again, and now I'm standing on the Great Wall of China. But I've had no feelings of movement. I had no perception of travel to that location. I was in one spot and instantly I was in the next. It was simultaneously orchestrated. So I found myself in this field with flowers that I cannot explain the flowers, because we don't have anything on our planet that resembles the flowers I saw. The colours, you know, if you look at our colour spectrum, we only use about 8% of the colour spectrum. So the other 92% of colours is what I'm now experiencing in this field. In the distance, I could see mountains. There was buildings, there was people, animals. Some of the people were dressed in medieval clothing. Some of them were in futuristic spacesuit clothing. Animals were there, like bears, lions, and then we also had the prehistoric animals there, you know, T-Rexes, huge dinosaurs flying in the air like pterodactyls. But the thing that I learnt virtually straight away is when I looked down at these flowers, when I walked, the flowers actually moved so I wouldn't step on them. So they had a conscious awareness of what I was going to do. So it absolutely instantaneous, like a light bulb, that I realized that I could sense the thoughts of the flowers in front of me, and they knew what my intention and what I was going to do as well. So then I was looking at the buildings and the mountains. And if you can imagine mountains, you know, like Mount Everest, but 20 times as big. You know, instead of just being 30,000 feet high, we're talking 100,000 feet high, these huge mountains, because everything that I was seeing was now so amplified and magnified 10,000 times. It was very, very panoramic. Very panoramic is the way that I explain it. So I say to people, how long was I in this field for? You know, I was walking around, I was going into buildings, I was talking to people, I went up the mountains. I was there probably about 6 to 8 months. Now, there's no time. So, you know, you look at our conversation today, we've been talking for X amount of minutes. So when you look back at, say, the last week and what you've done, you can say, oh, yeah, it's been a week because I went to this place, I've done that, I've spoken to that person. So when I calculate a time for how long I was in this place, it's probably 6-8 months that I was there, observing, talking with people. One of the things that I learned in this place is what we think we create. There was this lady in front of me that I like talking about because I actually was commenting, you know, I was talking to this one woman for so long. She was like Henry VIII, you know, the King of England back in the 1500s. Henry VIII's wife, Anne Boleyn, who unfortunately he beheaded.
Right.
She looked very similar to that. She had the hair, the magnificent long draping medieval dress, and then instantly, boom, just like that, she's in a very short 1960s miniskirt with all white flowers over it, and her hair was a short black bob. So what we think, we instantly create. You know, we can be any age we want when we're there. We can be any appearance that we want when we're there. So I spent a long time in this place of just this field with the buildings going through like the city. I can draw you like a road map of where the buildings were with the streets, who was standing where, what animals were walking through. Funny thing, I saw this T-Rex walking. Now, you can imagine the size of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And as he was walking, he was deliberately missing the people and the flowers because everything just moved, so nothing was hurt. Because it's just that everything was one in their consciousness, awareness, that we do become one when we're there. We know what everybody else is thinking. So the way I word it in my book my book Heaven Exposed, I say I could hear the music coming out of the mountains. I could hear the thoughts of the plants. I could smell the buildings because all our senses still exist, and I could hear the water in the streams because everything is just, you connected and everything was one. Mm. So I stayed there probably 6 months. And then this lady behind me, who I now know who she is, thank you so much. She's like a spirit guide for me now. She's tapped me on the shoulder and said, Lynda, it's time to go now. And as I turned to look at her, I'm back in this fog stage where it's like blinking, and I open my eyes and I'm in this room where I'm in front of 3 beings. So here's another picture that I drew. Bring it over so you can see what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And there's me with this box in front of them. Hmm. So people ask me all the time, what do these 3 beings look like? They had no physical humanoid form, but I could make out a head and shoulders. And the energy, because they had no body, they were pure energy, the energy was coming up into this ball that was their head. So you can imagine this like a rotating counterclockwise and clockwise at the same time, this energy ball. And all the energy was coming up through like their body into it. So I'm standing in front of them and I could see this box, which I've drawn here. I'm standing in front of this box. And it was a knowing. They didn't communicate with me at all. So I don't know if these were male, female, or other sexes or gender. But I just knew that I had to look into that box, and I knew what to do when I looked inside the box. And it was coming from them. So I opened the lid of that box, and inside there was no walls or no floor. It was infinite. And inside there was millions of these little bubbles, like balloons. And inside each balloon was like a little video screen of every action that I'd ever done. So one that I like to talk about, when I was about 5, my grandmother had a white Persian cat. And here's this memory. So I picked up this one ball of me with this white cat, and I was pulling its tail. So as soon as I was watching this replay of a past event that I'd done, instantly I was the cat, and I could feel the pain in my tail. So now I've got a tail, and I could feel the pain from this young 5-year-old obliviously pulling my tail. And I felt how infuriated the cat was, how angry the cat was because I'd caused it grief. So people ask me all the time, what's my definition of karma? And I say to them, it's karma to me is when we're doing our life review, which is what this was, standing in front of this box and going through each of our memories. Our life review is when we judge ourselves for every action that we've done, and then we have to forgive ourselves for everything that we've ever done in our existence. So something bad we've done, like pulling the tail of a Persian cat, I have to forgive myself for doing that to the cat. And then we receive it tenfold. It's tenfold. No, this is biblical. It's in the Bible. You will receive it back tenfold. So a memory that I picked out of me being kind to somebody, that gratitude that that person felt when I'm being kind to them, I'm now feeling that tenfold. And, I swear if you needed tissues in this place, you'd go through 100,000 boxes of tissues, because every instant, every moment, every action we've ever done, we've got to judge why. And because the emotional state is tenfold, I was bawling my eyes out during that whole time that I was in this, because there is no time, in this place. So again, people say, how long did I stand in front of these 3 beings looking inside my box? I've got to go 12 months because I went through hundreds, thousands of my memories, so each memory that I was picking up, when you observe it, and then you've got to look at why you did it, and then you've got to judge yourself why you did it, and then you feel the gratitude or the anger of the other person that you've done the actions to. So one of those bubbles could be 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I went through thousands of those. So, it's hard to put a time limit on what I did and how long I was in just that spot.
Also, you mentioned that you felt the pain of the cat, which is something interesting. I've never heard that in a life review before. But can you recall like other times that you may have insulted a person or hurt a person and now you relive them feeling the pain that you caused them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It still does happen to me. If I stand on an ant and I look down and I see this little tiny ant outside in my yard, I instantly feel now what it's like to be that ant, to be squashed.
Yeah.
If I'm angry at somebody, causing like abuse towards somebody else, I'm now on their receiving end, because what you receive during like this near-death experience, it doesn't ever leave you. It's hard to say that getting used to being back alive, because it took me a very long time after I woke up to actually relearn how to be in a body again, learning how to make all our bodily functions. What is this breathing? I even said it to a nurse, why do I have to breathe for? Because where I've just been for about 5 years, we don't need to breathe. Mm-hmm. So why do I have to inhale and then physically exhale? I even said to the nurse, my God, this is do I have to do this constantly? Mm-hmm. And she said, yes, you do. Mm-hmm. So it took a long time for me to even learn my own body. Mm-hmm. And, I've done a lot of research in near-death experiences, and a lot of people do wake up with psychic abilities. Mm. And I think it's because I was gone there for so long that now I've got so many, and they do become pretty apparent most days. Mm. Some days I just have this knowing of what's going to happen in 2 hours. Other days I have premonition dreams. Other nights I empathically feel what's going on with other people. Then the next day I'm seeing spirit guides appearing in front of me, and then the next day it's ghosts. Some days it's all of them together. Mm-hmm. But, I'm still learning what gifts I've got, even though it's 20 years after. Mm-hmm. So I actually say to people, one of the things that's really cool that I like doing now is I can see inside people since this event. So I've actually got a photo here of me seeing inside people. So just so you know what it does look like, because it's, it's hard to explain it. So here's the photo. If you can look in there, so you can see like kidneys, heart, liver, bones.
Right.
That's what I can see now. I can see inside a plant and see all its stem structure and molecular structure of how the branches are formed. So I know where it needs to be pruned. It's amazing what I've got now since this, but this part here, that was, I still had another 2 years of experience up at home. If you want to hear what happened to me next, because it's about to get very interesting.
I was going to say, before we get into that, because I definitely want to hear about that, how long did it take you to adapt to your new abilities?
I'm still learning them, Jeff. Even 20 years after, because there's so many now that I've got that I didn't have before. I've been able to see ghosts since a child, which I put down to a near-death experience when I was a baby, because I was in hospital till I was 2. And, the doctors told Mum that there were days there where they nearly lost me. So I'm thinking I had near-death experiences as a child. So I've always been able to see ghosts and spirits. But since 2001, it's still a learning curve with, cars talk to me and tell me what they need to have serviced. People walk in with their furniture, their clothes on, and I know where they bought the clothes or who gave it to them, and where there's tears in the inside lining, because it talks to me. So it's not something that, I actually say it like this: when we're learning new abilities, you don't ask for everything at once, because it's so inundating for our small brains to fathom. So it's like an ongoing process. So I like going back to the movies. And there's a movie called Lucy with Scarlett Johansson in it, where she's going up in her brain capacity. And there's a scene there where she's actually looking inside a tree and she could see all inside the tree. And then she sees like these, they're like energy lines coming up out of people. I do that too. So, you see it in a movie and you think, oh my God, now I'm not crazy because they've put it into a movie. This, someone has experienced this. Mm-hmm. Even the movie The Matrix, where you've got all those lines coming down. I wake up some days and I go outside and everything's in these lines. Mm. And you think, what am I seeing now? What am I seeing now? And then you've got to go into spirit guides and other entities that I see. Fairies. I might just lose a couple of viewers for you there. Mm. But why do we say there's no fairies? It's only because no one's ever seen one, so this girl that was behind me, taking me on this like tour, because she was like showing me where everything was. I've seen her. Mm-hmm. So here's a photo of me with her. This was last year. She appeared to me at the pool. So there she is standing in the pool, mm-hmm. and all the water disappeared around her. She called my name, so I turned around, and there she was floating in the water, but there was no water around her. It was like an angel. Mm-hmm. But then I realized, oh my God, this is the lady who talks to me over my left shoulder every day. Every day she talks to me. Some days about 8-10 times. Other times it's only once or twice. But it's every day I hear her talking. She's got a really high-pitched voice, and she laughs while she talks. It's really weird. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm very connected now, mm-hmm. And it's an honor, and I'm so humbled by it, Jeff. Mm-hmm. I'm totally honored, mm-hmm. That they, I obviously have applied through my own life contract. I believed before I was born, they said, hey, do you want this job of being this person? And I went, yeah, give it on. But, you're going to die when you're 36. Yeah, I'll go through that if it means this. Mm-hmm. So I've openly accepted my life contract, and they're still giving me new gifts now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's amazing life that I'm leading, Right. And now I'm learning YouTube, and now I'm learning Skype and Zoom. Mm-hmm. So now they want me to be technical as well as spiritual.
Yeah. Mm. 2 quick questions. One is, you were there in your near-death experience for years, but I think that all happened within the 9 days that you were, or how many days that you were in a coma. And my other question is quickly, and then I'll let you answer both, is while you were in your near-death experience, did you see Jesus or God or any Allah or any a supreme being or a prophet or anything?
Okay, I'll address the first bit first. When I woke up and the nurses came in, because there were a couple of like psychic experiences that I had when I first woke up. Some of the nurses ran and didn't come back. But I did see my medical files, and they actually wrote in there 14 minutes clinically dead before paramedics' arrival with the defibrillator. So that's why I openly say it was at least 14 minutes, mm-hmm. because it was in my medical files that I got from the hospital. I was in a coma for 9 days. Okay. During that 9 days, I actually had more than one instance where I did flatline again. Mm-hmm. I've now got a really nice scar on my leg where they strapped me to the bed because I was convulsing because I had 15 drips in. People say, have you got proof? Look at all, I'll just bring it in. See all the scars from the needles, or in this arm. Yeah. I've got all these scars where I was on life support, and I've got scars up my arms. Under here I had a heart pump in as well. I had drips in my leg where they were changing the cannulas every 2 days while I was on life support. So I've got a lot of physical evidence to support that I was in a coma for 9 days. Mm-hmm. So did I see any biblical figures in the Bible? What do they call them? Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit? What were these three? They didn't tell me, yes, I was Jesus, yes, I'm God Almighty, I am your Heavenly Father. There was nothing like that at all. But who the heck were these three? Because, you go back to the Bible, the Quran, Buddhism, etc., and generally they speak about the three. So I call these the big three because they didn't introduce themselves. They didn't tell me their names. But every time now when I do talk to the sky, because I talk to the sky a lot, and I say to them, especially to this girl who, she comes to me every day now, this girl that I saw at the pool last year, I say to her often, "What is your name?" And she replies, because I hear it, like someone standing about 2 foot behind you talking. That's how I hear her. She says, "We have no name, for we are all." Okay. I've got to be humbled enough to accept that. So in my understanding, it doesn't matter what I call her, as long as I give her that respect for her position. You look at God, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, even the saints, etc. They are dignified, honorary members of an elite group. That's all I can say. Even the archangels, they're elite members of an elite group. As long as we respect that group, does it ultimately matter what religious we are, what faith we belong to, as long as we have that faith that ultimately these beings do exist? Because I've studied the Buddhas, I've studied Native American history, I've looked at the Aboriginal faith here in Australia. I've even looked at Incas, etc., who their gods were, and the Egyptians, etc. It doesn't matter who we bow down to as our deity, as long as we have that faith and the belief that they exist, because ultimately we all are on that same page because of that faith in that deity or God. So did I see anyone up there? I'd say those three, whoever they were like a God figure.
Makes sense.
So I hope that explains it to you, Jeff.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't think we discussed how you got back. Did you decide to come back? Were you forced to come back? What happened?
So here I was doing my life review, happily going through all my all my bubbles in this big box that I'm looking at. And then I get the tap on the shoulder again from this girl behind me. And she says, "Okay, you've seen enough here now. We've got to go." So I'm back in the fog stage. You close your eyes, you open them again, and now I'm in a totally different location. If you can imagine a room where there's no walls, no ceilings, and no floors. So it's just all white space. So I'm in this white space, and over in a distance, there's a woman. And as she walks towards me, she was getting bigger because there was no floor beneath her feet. There was no walls for distance because there's no time there or space. So she walks up to me, and she was very angry. I will admit she was extremely angry. She said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, who are you? I don't know why I'm here." "You should know, you're not supposed to be here." I said, "Well, I don't know where I am." She said, "Well, you've got to go back." And I said, "Well, how can I go back when I don't know where I am? Where am I?" And she was, this is how she said it. Because she was so angry with me, just that.
Wow.
And then she said, and one of the crazy things she said to me was, this is her quote, "They didn't tell me I had to teach you to do this." So I said to her, "Who are they?" And she said, "Well, you already should know that." And I'm like, "No, I don't know who they are." And I said, "Well, what am I supposed to learn?" And she said, "Oh, well, I'm going to have to teach you now anyway." So she was obviously somebody to bring me back into my body. So turns out, I said to her, "Who are you?" And she said, "My name's Karina. I am your great, 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 great grandmother." So she went into depth. And, we're talking again, conversations. If you have friends over on a Friday afternoon and they stay for 4 hours, think about what you say in that 4 hours. So her and I spoke years. She went into detail about her life as my great, 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 great grandmother. Every person she knew with great detail, like hours and hours just telling me about her friend Sally that lived down the street. She went into great detail how to carve up a wood tree to make a chair. She went into great detail how to make a saucepan so they could cook. How she made this thing to wash her clothes with. So she'd carry it was foldable. She'd put it over her shoulder and take it down to the stream. And how she used to wash clothes and how she would dry clothes. how she would make clothes. That alone there was a week or two conversation just showing me how they made clothes. So I got a lot of detail about my great-great-great-great-grandmother, Karina. So ultimately, after months, she said to me, you do realize that if you go into there, and she's pointing past me, if you go into there, you can never go back to your life. So I've turned around, and here's another picture I drew. Here's me. Here's Karina. And this. So people say they see the tunnel. So if you can imagine a tunnel swirling both counterclockwise and clockwise at the same time, it had a depth to it. And right at the end, it was pure white light. So that's why I've got a light at the end of the tunnel that you can see. So I'm looking in this tunnel, and I wanted to go into it. It was like an energetic attraction, a magnetic pull. Like what I'm talking about, like a magnetic, I'm getting sucked in. It's like getting sucked into a vacuum cleaner, that magnetic pull into something. So I was nearly going to go into it, and she came over and she pulled me out of it, and she said, look, if you go in there, that's where we reincarnate, and you can't go back to where you were before. So I said to her, how does this work? And she said, well, I can't tell you too much because I've actually never done it myself, but I've seen many go in there. And once you go through that process, that's where you learn your next life contract. So she went into a lot of detail about our life contracts, what we assign ourselves, the jobs and the lessons before we're born. She said, if you go into there, you'll be born again in whatever, you assign a year to when you want to be born. You assign the life, the parents, the jobs, the lessons that you want to go through when you come again. So you've got to remember here, there is no time. So if I had died in 2001 and I went into that tunnel, I feasibly could have been reincarnated into 1990. So I'm alive in a different life at the same time that I'm Lynda in 1990, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's
so that's where we come into twin flames, we come into soulmates, because we can exist in different bodies because there's no time. So that's one of the videos that I did about 2 weeks ago in my Dr. Lynda Cramer Paranormal Facebook group, where I explain it and I draw a diagram of like a timeline from 1940, 1950, 1960. We're born, we died, but then we can come back. So you've got all these alternative lives all coexisting on the planet at the same time, instantaneously. So she gave me great insights into that. Just talking about that tunnel would have been months again. So at the end of it, she said, look, you've got to go back. You've seen all the areas that we wanted to show you. And I said, well, how do I go back? And she actually said to me, all you've got to do is think about it. Because what we think, we create. Remember, I learned that in the first part where I'm in the field, what we create, what we think we create. So as I started thinking about the bedroom where I slept, the toilet where I passed out and ultimately died, now I'm back in my human form, waking up from the life support. So, the first thing I saw when I was waking up was the tube that they were pulling out of my throat, that long, it's a light blue hue tube for life support. And there's a nurse standing there, and she said, squeeze my fingers. So I'm squeezing her fingers. And for a few hours there after I woke up, obviously because I've been in a coma for 9 days, I had no bodily functions. I couldn't talk because my throat was so dry from being on life support for over a week. But the next day she came in and she said, how do you feel today? And I said, how's Motley? She said, what do you mean about Motley? And I said, oh, my God, you've been here all week telling me about your cat. He's got long grey hair. He's 14 years old. He's got kidney problems. You don't know whether to put him down, or you don't know whether to get another kitten. You don't know whether to take him to the vet, put him on kidney pills. You've been talking about Motley all week. She looked at me and she said, Lynda, I do have a cat. His name is Motley. He is 14 years old. He has got kidney trouble, but This is my first day in ICU. I haven't been here. I've been down two stories below us. So how do you know all this about my cat? So that's when it started, the day after I woke up, when I could actually talk to people. I ended up going into my own private room because, you stay in the ICU for a day or two. Then they put me into my own private little suite. And I had a bed, and on the side of my left side, because this is my left side, there was a mirror. There was windows all the way down the wall, and I had a TV at the end of my bed, and then there was like a little ensuite with a toilet and a shower, and the door into my room. And I'm just sitting there watching who was at the end of my bed. There was an old lady sitting on a chair in the corner at the end of my bed. There was a tall man, probably 40, 45 years old, standing next to her. There was a dog, like a sandy-coloured Labrador dog, running around playing with this little child there. And this nurse walks in and she says, "What are you looking at?" Because I'm just observing these four people, the three with the dog. She said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "I'm looking at them." And she says, "Who's there?" I said, "Can't you see them? There's an old lady, there's a man, there's a dog, and there's a little kid." Mm-hmm. And she said, "Lynda, there's no one there." So I've looked at the man standing next to the chair, and I said, "Look, if you want her to know that you're here, can you please bang on this glass window?" Mm-hmm. He walked over and like this. Wow. The whole window was shaking from vibration. She ran out of the room and never came back. She never came back. She never saw me again after that. So the next experience that I really, definitively know happened, I arrived back, when we were driving home from the Cabarrus County Hospital, which is now called the Atrium Hospital in Concord, we only lived about 10 minutes away. And I can remember saying to my ex-husband, "Where are we? Why aren't we home yet?" And he'd say, "Well, it's only a 10-minute drive. We've only just been in the car for like 2 minutes." And it was seeming like 3 or 4 hours that we'd been on this major road trip, driving from California over to New York. Mm-hmm. And I kept saying to him, "Why aren't we home yet? I've got to get out of the car. I'm so tired. We've been driving for hours." He said, "Lynda, it's only a 10-minute trip and we're only halfway there. It's been 5 minutes since we got into the car." And then I said to him, "Why are you driving so close to the road?" Because there's no distance where I was for so long, because you've got to remember I was up there for years. The road, I couldn't understand the line in the middle of the road where we were driving in a lane, because the road was a mile wide. Because I kept saying to him, "Why don't you drive over there so you're not so close to the other cars?" Because there was no distance. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that I realised as soon as getting out of hospital. So we got home and I was sitting out the front because I couldn't walk or anything for like a week or two after I got home. And I was sitting out, we had 3 front steps leading to the front door. And I was sitting there and there's all maple trees in the front yard. And I was sitting there and I heard Lynda as clear as day. So I'm looking around to see if it's one of the neighbours, thinking, "Oh, yeah, someone's seeing if I'm home. Who's talking?" And then I heard, "Lynda!" Mm-hmm. And you know how your ears prick to a noise, so like an animal does, so you know where it's coming from? It was this tree sitting to my left side. So I'm looking at this tree thinking, no way. That can't be the tree saying hello to me, calling me. So I looked at the tree and I said, out loud, I said, "Is that you talking?" Mm-hmm. And I clearly heard, "Yes," like someone yelling across from the other side of the street. So I've looked at this tree. Now, the day that this happened, it was a windless day. There was no wind or breezes. So I've said to this huge maple tree, probably 50 feet tall, I said, "If you can hear me and I can hear you, please move." All of a sudden, this tree standing there, an almighty maple tree, it started doing this. All the leaves are doing this, and the leaves are falling off this one tree. And there was about 8 trees in the front yard. And it was only happening to this one tree. So if it was a breeze, it would have happened to all the trees, you'd think. So that was the first example where I knew that trees and plants were communicating with me. Dead people were every day since. You know, I've had some, I've worked with the police for 10 years as an admin officer. How do you think that was, seeing ghosts every day, you know, where I can't say anything at work because it was such a conflict of interest with what I was doing with the police. You know, but I know, you know, she kept saying to me in 2000, when I was there with Karina, she kept saying things to me about all the things that were going to happen in my future. She told me that I'd work with the police for 10 years. She told me it won't be for another 10 years after you leave that you actually learn the lessons of why you had to be there in that position. She told me I'd be a first aid trainer for 2 years. So in 2001, she told me I'd be a first aid trainer. And I was a first aid trainer from 2014 to 2016. So that's 2 years, which is exactly proof what she said. You know, so when you sit there and you think, wow, I remember her telling me that in 2001 and now it's come true. So it's like a confirmation where you have that aha moment of, oh my God, Heavenly Fathers, thank you so much for allowing me to have the confirmation of this being true. It wasn't a hallucination, because if it was a hallucination, how would I know in 2001 what was going to happen in 2015? So we can eliminate it was drug-induced hallucination. We can eliminate, because of the evidence now that I obtain with like psychic readings, seeing injuries in people. How the hell would I know what an injuries were in people unless I actually was seeing inside them and saying, oh my God, your cholesterol is telling me it's 26. You better stop eating butter. Your intestines are telling me to stop eating butter. So, you know, that sort of thing where I can look at women and I can look inside uteruses and say, oh my God, you've had 4 children. I can see that your first son, he sat really high because he sat right on the top of your uterus. How would I know that unless something like this experience had happened to me? You know, so what do I do these days, Jeff? I sit here now teaching people the lessons that I learnt when I was there. You know, yes, I'm a medical intuitive, I have premonition dreams, and I'm a psychic, I see ghosts every day. But that's not the best part of the experience that I learnt. Because to me, going home and learning what truly matters, money means butt kiss in heaven. Gender doesn't mean a thing. Title, entitlement, any qualifications that we have mean nothing when we're home, because everything is one and we're all connected. So ultimately what does matter when we go home is how we treat ourselves and others. Kindness, respect, appreciation, generosity, forgiveness, understanding, love, unconditional love, because it is tenfold when we go there. And, you know, they talk about brownie points. Oh, I want brownie points for when I go to heaven. If you do want to earn brownie points, be kind to other people. Feel that generosity now of what it's like to just smile at a stranger and be grateful that you've got that capacity to generate those positive emotions to others. So they then go off through their pheromones, because that's scientific proof here of what I'm talking about. Our pheromones are attractive and they do commute to others and connect with other people. So the more we hug each other, the more we're emitting our pheromones onto others. So that's science. But in a spiritual realm, we're communicating through our energetic connectivity. So the more kind we are, the more compassionate we are, the more understanding, forgiving, loving, our life reviews are going to be so much easier. You know, you'll need your box of tissues because it's a hallmark moment. You know what I mean? It's a really hallmark moment. Look, I'm crying now just because I can remember that feeling of, you know, when your heart's pulsing out of your chest with so much pride, respect, love, compassion, you know. So I love talking to people like yourself who want to know these stories, because, look, it makes my eyes cry, you know, because I still remember it. And that's my ultimate goal now, is to get the word out there. So, I've written a book about heaven, which is called Heaven Exposed.
Mhm.
I've got my book, Ghosts Exposed, educating people why ghosts stay, why spirits go to heaven,
Mhm.
what they can do up there, what they can't do, what we can and can't do for them. So that's an educational book.
Mhm.
But my book, Heal to Success,
Mhm.
that's scientific. It's psychology. How to get through our grudges, anger, abusive natures, so we can start living heaven on earth and be gracious, be considerate, be understanding, kind, and loving.
Mhm.
So we do become heaven on earth ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've got many books. We may need to get you back here at least for the ghost book, because I think that would be a really interesting podcast. But
I do like talking about ghosts. Yes.
why don't you let the audience know all your books and where to find them?
Sure. Well, it started with Ghosts Exposed.
Mhm.
It's over 100 pages, Ghosts Exposed. It educates what happened. So I've actually drawn a map. So we've got a person dies. Where do we go and what do we become? So we can either become a ghost or a spirit. Ghosts stay earthbound, and there's generally two reasons why people stay earthbound. One, we love something more passionate than ourselves, or we don't know that we've passed. So I explain it. So it's an educational book. I've also got real ghost photos in there that I've actually taken. I've got the call log. I took a photo of my call log. My neighbour rang me last year, but he died 3 years ago. So the call log and the conversation that he had with me is in the book, Ghost Exposed. Then I have Heaven Exposed. I think that's about 110 pages. It's got all my diagrams that I've shown today. They're all in there. Where I went, what I went through, the lessons I've learned, how to be a better person ultimately. So that's over 100 pages, which I've spoken about today. And then I've got Heal to Success, how, using psychology, how to stop being grudge-filled, how to stop having anger issues, how to get through addictions, how to stop sabotaging yourself through the chemicals that we input into our body through, our foods, sugar, fluoride and all that sort of stuff that contaminates our pineal gland and third eye. And then I've got a lot of tools in there too, how to become intuitive, how to live life better and be heaven on earth. So all three are available on my website, which is www.lyndaray.info. My mum put a Y in my name, so it's LYNDA. RAE is my middle name. So it's lyndaray.info is where I have my 3 books. And if people are on Facebook, I have a group. It's called Dr. LYNDA, Lynda, Cramer, CRAMER, Paranormal. So I try to do videos in there every 2 days, explaining how to protect ourselves, what are angels, how do we communicate with crystals, what can ghosts do for us. I also do the odd, here's a great ghost story for you, here's a picture, other members in there, because I think I'm over 800 members in there now. So, members post pictures saying, oh, let's debunk this. Once a week I talk with Mike Cavalli, he's in Austria. So that will be happening in about 5 hours from now, where I talk with Mike Cavalli. So we talk anything from aliens, time travel, animal mutations, weird phenomena is what him and I talk about. So that's once a week in there. So that goes live, so then members can come in and be interactive and talk. Then I've got beautiful videos from people like yourself, Jeff. So I'd love you to share this with me today so I can put it in so members in my group can come along and like your group as well, because that's all what I'm about now. I love advertising people who I've been associated with, so then I give you back, that energetic return as well. Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah. And then I've also started my YouTube. Yeah. Yep. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. What is your YouTube channel, real quick?
It's going to be called Celestial Knowings, and it's going to be how to be heaven on earth. So every video will be one word, anger. So it'll be psychology. What is anger? How do we use it and how do we eradicate it? The next one might be self-love. How do we giving people tools on how to accomplish self-love? So that's going to start in the next week. You know, I've just got to get my technical assistant over to help me set that up tomorrow, so I can start doing the videos in there, because ultimately, you know, the world now is filled with anger, doubts. We've all got insecurities. We're living in fear. You know, negativity is just spewing everywhere at this point. Ultimately, when we go home, there is no negativity. So start living heaven on earth now.
Yeah. Do you think people can learn any psychic abilities on their own without having an NDE? And if so, what can the average person do?
I do it like this, Jeff. When people come here and they say, oh, Lynda, it's so cool that you see ghosts. Can I do it too? So I'll tell you an example. A lady came here and she said that exact question to me. She wanted to start seeing ghosts. And I said to her, have you ever asked them to give it to you? And she said, no. I said, all you've got to do is ask. Because once we give our free will over to something and we decide that we want to accomplish it, we can start doing it, because it is, psychic abilities are an innate ability. So she said, oh, I don't know what to say. So I said, well, do you give me permission to do it for you and you repeat my words? And she said, yes. So I said, fill in your name. So I said, I, Lynda, and she said, I, with her name. I request the universe, so she repeated, I request the universe, to please, if it's in your free will and your decision that I have these abilities, please grant me the ability to see dead people. You know, if you want to have psychometry where you touch an item like a pen and you get the residue energy off there so you know who owned the pen prior to you obtaining it, that sort of thing. So that's called psychometry. We have premonition dreams that you can ask for. There's that knowing of what's going to happen later today. You know, should I go and get my daughter at 3 o'clock or should I wait until 4? And then you just pause and wait for the answer to come with that knowing. So those sort of videos, I do those in my group on Facebook, Dr. Lynda Cramer Paranormal, where I teach people how to do it. My video this morning that I did, it was healing using 5 different modalities: Reiki, arm activation, palm, water, because water does retain memories, and the I ams. So it was 5 different ways to heal ourselves. Because one thing you don't know about me, Jeff, yet, one, I've got a broken neck. C2 and C3 aren't connected in my neck because I had a car accident when I was 20. And also, 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Do you think I'm in a wheelchair? I'm not a quadriplegic, and I don't have a brain tumor now in my brain. I've healed myself, which I am not egotistical about this. I just want to get the word out there on how we can heal ourselves, be better people, eradicate stress, eradicate any anger issues, get rid of all that negativity. Because when we do come into like a heavenly knowing, which is why I called my group, my YouTube channel, Celestial Knowings, when we get into that state of being positive and we fill ourselves with that positivity, we can eradicate illnesses, diseases, and other issues in ourselves. Because, you know, they call it miracle work for a reason. You know, you've mentioned today biblical stuff. It is miraculous what's happening. You know, how do you just dissolve a brain tumor? The doctors have explained it, you know, because I had a CT scan and 3 MRIs, and it was there. And then the next MRI I had, it was gone. How did it go? Where did it go without surgery? You know, I know how I got rid of it because I worked on myself. So I'm out now teaching people how to do this themselves so we can all be better people. Yeah, so I hope that explains what you asked.
I was going to ask one other thing, and then I'm so focused on you that I forgot my question. But
you're sweet, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, it's okay. I'm trying to do my job. Well, since we're running out of time and we need to wrap it up, is there some message or some piece of advice that you can give to the audience before we go?
Sure. be my motto. My motto is now become your glow. Be that glow which will emit and be absorbed by others. You know, the world is in desperate need right now of hope, trust, belief, and love. Be that love, be that beacon to others through your own glow, where you walk out of your door with that pride of knowing that what you think about today, you can make it a reality for tomorrow. Think about what you want to become. Don't dwell on the past, because the past is done. There is no past, but we all can create our future by just thinking what we do want to create tomorrow. And please generate it for everybody on the planet. That's my message to leave you with, darling.
Thank you for sharing that. And when you said the word future, I remembered my question. And I got one comment here that says, thanks for sharing your story. You are beautiful.
Oh, thank you. You know, I'm so humble, Jeff. I really am. You know, I'm not an egotistical person at all. You know, I'm just an average person. You know, I'm in my 50s now. You know, I sit here and I wonder sometimes, why did they allow this to happen to me? You know, obviously there was a reason for it, you know, and it's just such an honor that I'm now connecting with beautiful people like yourself, so we can spread this word to the masses, because everybody needs it. You know, there's so much self-doubt going on at the moment. You know, I've been watching what's happening with your US elections. You know, I lived in America. I studied the Constitution for 3 years for my immigration over there. I know the dramas going on, the self-doubt, you know, the stability and the security of loss of jobs, you know, people getting sick, etc. So this is when we can't just live in that fear. We've got to start being positive and creating it ourselves. Take that self-responsibility and self-accountability and really start making us the best version that we can possibly be of ourselves.
Let me get this last question in, because when you said future, it reminded me. Since you're able to see the future, do you think that everything's all played out, all destinies played out? Because how else wouldn't it be if you're seeing the future?
When you put it into linear lineage where there's no time and no space, how can there possibly be a future? The only reason why we call it past, present, and future is based on our world rotating around the sun, which gives us times of minutes, days, weeks, years, decades, centuries, etc. When I was home, everything was concurrent. Everything was now in the present. So everything is being played out in accordance with the life contracts that we sign up for. So I'd have to agree with you there. Everything does happen for a reason. There are no coincidences. There's no ironies, Jeff. Everything does happen in accordance with how it should be. And we just have to sit back humbly and accept it and allow it. Because ultimately, we signed up for our lives before we were born. We know the trials we're going to go through. Like me, I've been married twice, and then I had my daughter's husband as well. So it's virtually 3 marriages I've been through. And I knew that before I was born, to the point now where I say, okay, I know now why I had to go through that, to learn that lesson of forgiveness. The guy who killed me in America, how hard is it for me to forgive him? Extremely easy, when I realized his perspective was only what he could do at that given time, knowing his upbringing, his religious beliefs. So how could I hate him for it? He was only doing what he thought was right. So there's no hate, there's no anger, there's no resentment there for him. I love him, as I do all people, all animals, all life forms on the planet and beyond. So seeing the future, I think when I was a child, I used to call it time displacement. So, you know, Premonition Dreams comes into the same category. So we do get glimpses every now and again, like Premonition Dreams, where we can see what's going to happen in 3 days, 2 weeks, 3 years. But ultimately, those are treasured moments. They're gifts, because in this reality of our 3-dimensional being, we're not supposed to know the future, because the future's not set. we're supposed to go along each road. You know, if someone said, hey, just drive now over to the other side of your country, here's everything that's going to happen along the way. There's no learning involved. There's no adventure of that story unfolding as you get over to the other side of your country. So that's why we only live in the present. We just accept what's going to happen and do our best every day for what we can be. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Cramer, for giving me a little bit of your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you, and I wish you the best.
Same with you, Jeff. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
All right, you have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.